got that nerd rage. Nerd rage. I got that nerd rage. Nerd rage.
Welcome back, everybody, once again to the Nerd Rage Podcast. I am Ryan Anderson, and joining me, as always, to my left, he is the Marvel movie guy. He is
Brad Lehrman.
What's up, buddy?
Not much, man. What's going on?
Not too much, I mean, it's been crazy, and I straight up have to apologize right off the bat. We have put together so many episodes for you this week, and you guys are going to see it. It's going to be great. I just feel so bad that we didn't get a Nerd Rage Weekly like this one out for you guys as quick as we wanted to. I mean, this is the week of LA Comic-Con, and we are so excited about it. Brad, I don't know if we've told them on other episodes yet, but what can you say about your involvement this time around?
I think I got an email about doing an interview with Ken Jennings and Richard Garfield for the upcoming card game Half-Truth.
And for those who don't know, what are they most famous for?
Well, Ken Jennings, you can probably imagine if you ever watched Jeopardy. He was on there. He was
Yeah.
I think at the time, or I guess he was the highest winner on Jeopardy.
Yeah.
I think he just got passed up. And then Richard Garfield is actually the creator of Magic the Gathering.
And I told you before we even got on this, I know some people who are really excited about that because they still play Magic to this day. And that's totally cool. I just kind of fell out of card games in that serious way years ago, unfortunately. But I think Magic is still a cool thing. I mean, I still get nostalgic when I see Yu-Gi-Oh! Every once in a while. So nevertheless, enough about my old school nerd days. Let's get into what we always like to talk about, and we'll start with the top of the show, as we always like to do. So first thing I have to do is give a shout out to our buddy John Stratman, who is currently doing this Vader Down series. I think it's based on the novelizations that existed in the I don't know what you want to call it, the original canon with the books before they all kind of got thrown out of canon. But Vader Down was a really popular one, and he went in and did 2 parts in his 8-bit series. So if you guys like John when he was on the show, please go and check out his work. It's up on YouTube right now, just released it, and I think it's as good as any of his other stuff. So I think you all will enjoy it. Also, another one, he might be coming on the show again, Jay Sandlin. John probably will eventually too, but Jay Sandlin, our buddy, he is working on a comic that has now got a trailer, and that's over with Mad Cat Studios. We have actually got some of the first official pages of it, just, kind of to peruse it and just see what's going on in it. And a lot of it is pretty much what you'll see in the trailer, but we'd really like to have him on to talk about his inspiration for this comic called Over the Ropes. It's basically kind of inspired by 90s wrestling, and weirdly enough, as of this last week, wrestling has been kind of coming back into the comic books with both Marvel, DC. There is that kind of desire to bring it back, and even though we're not really doing the wrestling show right now, I'm glad to see that wrestling's coming back in a big way that people can be excited about. And then last thing I have to mention is a little side adventure thing. So while we were away, I have been to Ohio. Shout out to all the people from my work who are listening to this episode. Met people from all over the country, guys with super thick New York Bronx accents, people with thick Southern accents, and we were just this one collective rainbow of entertainment. We're all making fun of each other's accents. We had a really good time. And then we came back, and Amanda and I hit up Los Angeles again, ironically enough, and we're already going to go back there. But we're down there, and we went out of our way. Well, mostly I went out of my way to go and see the bat signal, because I was I'll do a selfie in front of it. It'll be great. Because basically, for those who don't know, Batman Day happened just a little while back, and they flashed up the bat signal up on specific landmarks in the big cities. So obviously Los Angeles is going to have it because, Warner Brothers is there, and it's a big thing for DC. So of course they say it's going to be at the city hall or whatever in the downtown. And we go out of our way. Everything's barricaded around the giant building, and there's nothing there. and I don't know why it never lit up there. I'm guessing their light probably broke. But then we go off and maybe about 2 blocks down the road, feeling a little defeated, like, why didn't it turn on? I look at Twitter, and they're like, the last one of the night, we're showing it over at the Warner Brothers studio lot. So I pop in over there, and Amanda and I get out, and then we get a little photo of it. I threw it up on Twitter, but I really wanted it to be in front of the building, the city hall, but we ended up at Warner Brothers. So I can't say it was all bad. Got some photos, and it was a good time. But did you celebrate anything for Batman Day?
No, unfortunately, I did not.
I figure Mr. Marvel not celebrating Batman like you should. No. But we did get to celebrate kind of yesterday in our own special Batman-ish way. We got to talk about the Joker movie. So I will keep the spoilers to a minimum. I will just say that it is a really engaging movie, and I can't wait for you guys to see what we had to say about that one. So listen up, check it out, and I think it's probably a good time to get into some rumor mill. What do you think, Brad?
Let's do it.
Okay, so for the rumor mill, what we're hearing is kind of a two-parter, and part of this has already been confirmed to a degree, but I'm going to put this to you, Brad. Robert Downey Jr. in Black Widow. Do you believe this to be true?
Probably.
I think at the most you're going to see him on some screen or something like that. I don't think we're going to get him, really in full Tony Stark mode and everything, because I think he would be a level of it takes focus really from her as a character. Like, I want it to be focused on Black Widow. Like, technically, even we're going to be talking about Harley Quinn later. I think honestly they should just call that movie something Harley Quinn or whatever, because that is not really what I would consider to be Birds of Prey. Like, let's just be honest, it is Harley Quinn's movie, and then to put other people around him, I think, is more of a distraction from what the movie's supposed to be about. But it's very possible. And the other half of that is that we've been hearing that William Hurt has been seen on set, and one of our sources has told us that we might actually see a lineup of the Thunderbolts, which is basically Marvel's version of like the Suicide Squad, that could be spinning off from this movie, that William Hurt's character Thunderbolt Ross will inevitably take some of the Marvel villains that have kind of like, wandered off into the darkness and not to be seen in other movies, only to be combined up with characters like Baron Zemo. We might see the Leader. Some of the other characters that have just kind of dissipated over time and been kind of forgotten about will come together in this movie, where I think Songbird is supposed to be added according to our source. So they might add a couple extra ones in there, but a good core of about 5 or 6 characters that we already know. I think it kind of makes sense because you don't have to really flesh out like Suicide Squad did. Like, who are these characters? How are they tied in? How do they tick? They're already kind of established, so you can just go right into them coming together and then going on whatever mission that the movie sends them on. Do you think we could get a Thunderbolts movie in the near future?
I don't know. I don't know. I doubt it for the moment. I think there's too much on the plate right now for Marvel to kind of dig into Thunderbolts territory.
The reason I wouldn't put it off too is because with James Gunn going over to DC to do Suicide Squad, it is almost kind of like a middle finger. I don't think they have any bad blood because he's coming back to do Guardians, obviously. But there is a very good chance that they could just put it out at the same time, kind of a Batman v Superman Civil War kind of thing, where they're very close to each other and let the fans kind of decide what kind of tone that they want. But I'm actually not against them doing a Thunderbolts movie. It obviously would have a different lineup than we've seen in comic book iterations. But, if you put Zemo at the head of the group even, I think they could really have something there. Okay, so that is it. As we like to do, Brad, I should, before I get into the DC Marvel Miscellaneous, I should mention that this week's Big Talk is going to be about the whole news that Kevin Feige is going to be dipping into Star Wars territory. So Brad and I are going to kind of speculate as to, what could come of that. Do we believe it to be 100% true? All of the thoughts around Kevin Feige entering into the Star Wars world there. So as we like to do, Brad, we always do DC, Marvel, or miscellaneous. Which would you like to do to start?
Let's do miscellaneous.
Miscellaneous it is, and because we have so much while we were away, we're going to do a top 4 instead of our top 3. So at the top 4, the number 4 spot, we have just a run through of all these trailers, and there have been quite a bit, and we probably missed a couple, so feel free to send us an email and let us know which ones we missed. But we'll start off here with some 2 war picks. One is Midway. What do you think, yay or nay, Brad?
I'm gonna say yay.
I'm giving it a yay too, and weirdly enough, because it's Roland Emmerich, the guy who did like Independence Day, but he's also kind of done some duds in between there, so it could be weak on performances, but the visuals and the period piece of it all just kind of is sucking me in, so I'm going with it too. 1917, the new Sam Mendes movie, which camera angles alone, just the cinematography just looks beautiful for such an epic war film. What do you think about this one?
I'm giving this a yay as well.
Yay as well. All right. Then Countdown. I think you had something to say about this one.
Is this the phone app thing,
phone
right?
app, yeah.
Hard pass.
I said it to you before we got on the air. I think of it kind of like a Final Destination, but it's like your app kind of controls it all. And the
Final Destination movies I was never really into either. So
that's fair. And I'm not giving that as a vote of confidence, actually. I'm actually saying, like, it feels like a cheap knockoff in a sense. Like, well, what, do we have a modern thing that we can attach to it? It's like making a movie about a horror, like a dating app or whatever, but it's a horror movie. Like, oh, if you click here and you check that box, it could be disaster or something like that. Stupid crap like that. So I'm going to give that one a thumbs down as well. Next one we have is the short film. I don't know if you want to even call it that, or teaser, which is Battle at Big Rock, which is the new, kind of tease for the upcoming Jurassic World movie. Thoughts?
Action was okay.
Yeah.
I think it leads into the next Jurassic World movie.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily sold on the direction they're going with that movie.
I was going to save it for a different part of the conversation, but I'm just going to say it here. I have this feeling, and maybe this is just my wishful thinking about it, but I see them having the potential to make this interesting by going like the Planet of the Apes route with it. I don't need dinosaurs to be talking, but if they slowly start overtaking the Earth and it's like that last fight for survival, I think that could be a really cool thread for them to, pull on. Other than that, it's just dinosaurs and humans. I don't know really what they have beyond this third movie, because either this is like their last stand, or this is just the beginning of something that's even crazier. And I think because it's Jurassic World and Universal's a little limited on franchises right now, I think they would tap into this as much as they possibly could. So that's why I'm thinking like Planet of the Apes. But
I think it's going to go into camp, and it's going to be like Journey to the Center of the Earth or something.
It totally could. We'll see. I really think that there's potential there, so I'm giving it a thumbs up. What did you say?
Timid thumbs up.
Okay. Kind of a shaky thumb. All right. Then we've got Ford versus Ferrari, the new movie with Christian Bale.
Looks awesome.
Yeah, Matt Damon, and it's directed by... I told you this yesterday. Do you still remember?
Oh, crap.
James Mangold. That's fine.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, so seeing him come from Logan to do this, I mean, yeah, it's a little bit of a departure, but he lends his level of realism to his pictures that I really appreciate. So I'm totally in on this one, and it sounds like Brad is too. Next up is The Irishman, the new Netflix movie from Martin Scorsese. Thoughts?
Yay, but I wish Scorsese would get away from his mobster movies.
I know, but it's kind of his MO, like gritty street drama. I get it. But, and, you know, it's more of a swan song, I think, because I don't see him doing much more after this one. Although, unless it becomes a mega hit, then maybe he will continue on. He'll do the whole, I'm trying to think of Kill Bill director. What's his name?
Tarantino.
Yeah, like Tarantino it up, where he's like, oh, yeah, I got one more movie left in me. I think I can do it. Well, that one was a success. One more movie. And, yeah, keep faking retirement. But with The Irishman, I think that is right up his alley. It speaks to what people know him for. Frankly, if you want another Scorsese kind of film, you know, you could pretty much just watch Joker. But I like The Irishman from what I'm seeing. And fun fact, even though it's a Netflix movie, I was just hearing, I think this morning, that they're going to be putting it in select theaters. And I think one of them is like Broadway, which is weird.
Nice.
So, yeah, interesting thing to check out. Then we have the Paul Rudd series, and I only threw it in because Paul Rudd's been attached to a lot of, you know, pop culture properties. But have you seen this one for Living with Yourself?
Looks interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of, like, this is a bit of a deep cut. Multiplicity. I don't know if you remember this movie with Michael Keaton from back in, like, the early 90s.
Reminds me of the Sixth Day.
Oh, yeah. Basically, the kind of the clone idea. But yeah, like, so there's a duplicate of him. It's supposed to be better than him in almost every way. I think it's interesting. I'm going to give it a thumbs down, not because of anything Paul Rudd related, but the fact that they decided to make it into a series when I feel like the content lends itself better to just like a simple, straightforward movie and just done with that. But they could change my mind when we get around to it. What is your take? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
I'm giving it a thumbs up.
All right. Next up is the trailer for Rian Johnson's new movie, Knives Out. I think this movie just looks spectacular. What about you?
Looks awesome.
Yeah. You know what I was thinking about the other day too is that with these murder mysteries, whether it's this or Death on the Nile, which we got the new cast for that, which looks great. We'll maybe talk about that later. There's so much there's such a great level of detail in terms of understanding characters, which I think a lot of modern movies kind of get away from that. It's like, okay, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so, they meet, crazy thing happens, let's get on to our adventure. In so many movies, especially the big blockbusters nowadays, that like for this one, it has still like a big feel, but it just feels like you get to understand like the characters and their motivations. And I miss the murder mystery concept. So I'm giving it a definite thumbs up. You don't hate this one anyways because it's Rian Johnson, do you?
No.
Okay, cool. And then Gemini Man, which is coming out just, I think, this weekend. Brad and I actually got an early screener to go and see it, but, you know, maybe we'll see how it works out with LA, but we might see it on this very special screen down in Los Angeles, and we're hearing good things about it. Like, the reviews are really positive. I actually might give this one a thumbs up, and I was kind of feeling thumbs down up until, you know, just this last month. What about you, Brad?
The trailer itself looks good, but I'm a little worried that like it's gonna be a little light
Stale?
on story.
Yeah, could be. I mean,
I'm not opposed to an action flick, but it seems like they're trying to set up something complicated, and I don't think it's that complicated at all.
well, and see, that's the interesting thing about it. It looked almost like a standard versus movie, a Freddy versus Jason or Batman v Superman or something like that. But in this case, it's young versus old and seeing them fight to the death or whatever. And now it seems like they kind of team up towards the end. And then on top of that, apparently there's some secret that they tease in the last trailer. If only they knew what we were or what we are, is kind of interesting. But I just hope it's not like a Shyamalan kind of twist and it turns out they've been aliens this whole time or some weird shit like that. So I don't know. That's just my take on it. I'm kind of more excited than I was before, but it could really end up disappointing me. Speaking of disappointing, have you seen the trailer for Terminator Dark Fate?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I think the one I watched was in Spanish, so
that wouldn't surprise me.
The narration was in Spanish, which I wasn't really all that mad about.
Right.
It seems like they improved the special effects a little bit in this trailer.
Yeah.
But the hit that the female, I guess, Terminator hybrid gives the actual Terminator still looks wired. A wire. It looks like the stunt double is on a wire, like 100%. It looks completely fake.
Aside from set photos and things like that, I haven't seen much of the behind the scenes as to how they're doing the work and everything on these characters. But like even there's that shot in the trailer where that metal bar goes through and it slices along her skin, and that metallic look, they just haven't polished that or come up with the technology to make that look good. Because every time I look at that, I go, I just doing unintentional cringe, and I'm just Well, and
the other thing that kind of made me cringe is the dialogue that the, I guess, supposed girl that they're trying to save.
Yeah.
Her dialogue is a little
I figured she'd be flat. The only thing that's disappointing...
She goes from this completely scared kid, and then all of a sudden there's like this one point in the film, it's like, I'm not going to run away. I'm going to stand and fight. Like, what are you going to do? What, you gonna flash a couple of different like hand signals in front of people?
Well,
does
no,
does the Terminator not understand Spanish?
Okay. Yeah, I know, I get you. But like, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to revitalize the franchise again, because now that it's back in James Cameron's hands, they can really do something with it, which is silly in my opinion, because basically, they've even teased in this trailer like she's the new savior that they're trying to gather around, kind of like how Sarah Connor was in the original one. It's like, oh, she's gonna give birth to the savior of mankind, and like, you have to protect her and all that stuff. And she starts as a scared kind of meek, like, I'm just running away from this creature in almost a horror movie kind of sense, and then it evolves into the point where she's defending herself and she's standing her ground. And I think they're trying to repeat the same thing, but with a new character who represents kind of like a new generation as they try and continue to evolve the series. But I don't think it's really evolving the series when you're kind of retreading the same ground again. And that's my biggest problem with it.
I think the big issue is that there are too many characters to kind of catch up ground with.
Right.
What's happened with Sarah Connor this entire time? Why is the old Terminator still around?
I mean,
in Terminator Genesis.
And obviously, you don't want to answer all the questions in the trailer. Some of that's good.
There's so much going on, because if it were just, Sarah Connor, honestly, if it was just Sarah Connor trying to save this girl,
right,
and that's like humanoid Terminator,
yeah,
it would be a really deep character study, which would have been a lot better.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again.
We have new Terminator, we have hybrid Terminator, we have old Arnold Terminator, we have Sarah Connor, and then we have a new girl that we have no clue who or what she's about.
Exactly. Like I've said before, this feels like they took the best parts of Terminator Salvation and mixed it with the worst parts of Terminator Genesis, and they said, here's your movie. And then maybe a little bit of a savior complex thing that for the... or a savior character design that they've created. But other than that, that's really what I'm seeing from this movie. And then some really overblown special effects that don't need to be there. Why did two planes need to be crashing into each other? That's never been a part of the Terminator franchise. There's another franchise that's, I'll just say it's The Walking Dead. Apparently The Walking Dead gets to deal with space in the season 10 premiere. I think it's season 10.
Sounds stupid.
Okay. The interesting, like,
stupid.
Okay. I'm with you. What you need to know is that something fell out of the sky. They're not literally like taking a rocket to space.
Well, see, you just misled me there. Now I look like an idiot.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're like stupid. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to set you straight. I don't want you to get flack from the internet. But anyways, that being said, I still don't think that they needed to go in that direction. I think they need to end Walking Dead instead of making more series and stuff like that. But as we continue on here, there are more trailers. We have the trailer for El Camino, the Breaking Bad. I don't know if you want to call it continuation or spinoff, but what do you think about El Camino?
It looks pretty cool.
I'm glad to see Jesse Pinkman back, but my question is, did we really need this whole time? I think they ended on a perfect note.
It might have just spurned off the fact that maybe it was something that Jesse Pinkman wanted to do, and I think he got enough support that he was able to convince the actual creators to kind of like go along with this.
Oh yeah, I'm sure Vince Gilligan has something really good in mind. Like he wouldn't explore it for the sake of just exploiting his property. He doesn't seem like that kind of content creator, or that's not his vision for his properties. As from what I've seen, the way he explores his world, that he, like with Better Call Saul, it didn't feel like it was just intentionally trying to retread old ground. It was like, this is kind of a distant character, and this is stuff that had nothing to do with Jesse, had nothing to do with Walt. It's all its own thing, and then maybe there will be some connected pieces along the way because you're in that world. And that's why I think that show still works to this day. But I'm curious to see. Maybe they have something really good here, and maybe it's Jesse getting some sort of restitution that he didn't have by the time the series ended. So there could be some loose ends, and if he ties them up, I think then this will be a worthy movie. Beyond that, we have a very surprising movie. I'm sorry, I should say, you give it a thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs up.
Yeah, okay, me too. Uncut Gems, this new Adam Sandler movie from A24 that just came out of nowhere. I am really fascinated by Adam Sandler taking on serious roles. I want to give this one an immediate thumbs up. How about you?
After seeing the trailer, it looks really good. I'm giving it a thumbs up.
Yeah, especially him like interacting with like all the celebrities and the basketball types. I don't know. And then him being kind of that like sleazy kind of I don't know what you want to call him, like a jewel marketer or whatever. He the skeevy guy who's pawning these things off and what he's doing. I love the portrayal he's giving, and his performance seems like it's the best part of this movie. I'm giving it a definite thumbs up, and it sounds like you're intrigued as well. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yes.
Next, we go in a completely opposite direction. Spies in Disguise. What do you think about Will Smith turning into a pigeon and interacting with Tom Holland as they, I guess, save the day against some bad guys?
Great movie for the kids.
Exactly. I'm sure it'll be really fun. Will Smith always makes it nice and funny. I could actually end up enjoying this by the time it's all said and done, but it's not winning any sort of awards. It'll probably come and go and be relatively forgotten, but again, good for the kids. Thumbs up for just fun. Interesting one that comes next. Zombieland 2. We know it's coming out, I think in the next week actually. And in the new trailer, we actually get to see a tease of Bill Murray, which, for those of you who've seen the first movie, something's not right here. Thoughts on that, Brad?
Yeah. Do you want me to spoil it?
Well, I don't want you to necessarily come straight out and say it for people who haven't seen it, but at the same time, like, where do you think this part with them showing Bill Murray exists? Like, are they faking certain things from the first movie, or are they going back? And
maybe Jesse Eisenberg's character is having like some sort of like nightmare or something, and then Bill Murray's just tormenting him throughout the whole movie. I don't know.
It could be. I don't know at this point. Like, I had a third option in my head other than the two that I just said. One, that they're just using him for promotional material because people know of how the first movie went.
Or maybe Tallahassee gets hit in the head, has like concussion, and then Bill Murray is like appearing as his personal Jesus or something.
I like that. That's a good fourth one. Hadn't even thought of that. So, if it's not what those last two that we just mentioned are, I think back to the first two. I think maybe it's them just kind of going back to before all the events of the first movie. Before they meet him, basically. And, maybe they'll use that to kind of inform something that happens in future events in this movie. But we'll see. But I'm totally excited for Zombieland 2. I like that they kind of took a break. They did the director did other movies. He ended up doing some TV shows, even did Venom last year, and now he's back to doing something that he's really good at. And then obviously the writers, I think it's Reese and Wernick who did Deadpool. They're back on this as well. So if it isn't as good as the original, it'll be damn near close. And that's why I'm giving it a definite thumbs up. Same with you?
Mm-hmm.
All right, next is The Kingsman. Not to be confused with Kingsman or Kingsman 2, The Golden Circle. This is the prequel to the Kingsman franchise called The Kingsman. I want to give this a strong thumbs up, but I'm kind of doing one of those weak ones you mentioned before. And I say that because as cool as it is that they're going back and they're adding that level of classy sophistication to it all and kind of showing how everything came around, I'm getting some serious Wonder Woman vibes from this. And I don't know, what do you think?
I mean, I think it still is going to feel like a Kingsman movie. I think
Yeah.
the action and the cinematography is going to be pretty similar, but in terms of story, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think this feels like Wonder Woman, personally.
No, okay, and that's good.
There's
Yeah.
some imagery, but again, it's sharing a time period, so there's going to be a little bit of overlap.
I just feel like someone was sitting there watching Wonder Woman like, oh, this is what we need to do to fix the franchise. We'll go back in time. We'll make it a period piece. And, some of this stuff about trench warfare, we'll dip into it. It'll look the same, but I don't think people will notice. But maybe that's just me, too. I could be seeing things that I want to see. Maybe I just want to see another period piece Wonder Woman movie again, which is totally true. But I'm still excited for it. I'm just nervous to see if it dips more into the Wonder Woman territory or if it becomes more of its own thing as we get more trailers. So, I'm a weak but still tentative yes, I would say. And you're giving it a thumbs up?
For now, yeah.
For now. Okay. Not one that I was expecting us to necessarily talk about right off the bat, but then we got a trailer for Frozen 2. What do you feel about the Frozen franchise and us getting a second one? Indifferent. Okay. I mean, I think it's good for what it is. Like the Let It Go song got really played out, but the movie itself is pretty interesting. I basically looked at it as like an Iceman origin movie and like an Elseworlds kind of thing because that's kind of what it is. But I do like the characters, Elsa and I think it's Anna or whatever. Like they're two interesting sister characters. And then the interesting theory, the fact that they might be connected to Tarzan in the Disney animated universe.
How?
There's a picture on a wall in their castle that is similar to Tarzan's parents. It's a whole thing. Look into it. It is out there and it is very intriguing. And if in any way they bring Tarzan into this movie franchise, they can just have my money. I'm so in on that theory. But yes, that is a thing that they've been talking about on the side. But then again, Disney always slips in weird things. They'll throw in dicks in weird places, or they'll do a homage to something that people don't realize until like 3 years later and it doesn't go anywhere. So this could be just random, but I think the trailer itself looks good. I don't think I needed to see more of this because her story seems pretty straightforward. She's got powers. I think now this is like a, how did you get your powers? Cool. I think it'll be just fine. A lot of cutesy characters, Disney doing its Disney thing, and I'll give it a, tentative thumbs up, I guess. Same for you? Or are you giving it
again, indifferent?
Indifferent. Okay, indifferent it is. All right. Next one we have is Stranger Things doing a very short teaser. I think, Brad, you said it was only like 5-10 seconds or something?
I think it was like 46 seconds.
Oh, okay. Longer than I thought. But
Well, I mean, the last 10 or 15 seconds is just Netflix kind of like advertisement at the end. So.
What do you think this tease is implying?
A lot of people think that we're going to see Hopper. I don't think so.
I think it's what I said after the end of season 3. I think they're going on a search to get him back. I mean, it was definitely a heartbreaking moment with season 3. Sorry that I know that is kind of a spoiler, but they're going on a search for Hopper, and I would not be surprised if this next season is almost entirely in the Upside Down, because they almost spent no time in there this season. So to go and do the opposite of that seems to make sense, especially if you're going on a search mission. So, or search and rescue, whatever you want to call it. But I'm giving that one a thumbs up as of right now. You're ready for more Stranger Things?
I think so.
Okay.
I would just like their stories to be a little bit better.
True. I mean,
we're getting into a point where I think some of the cast is getting a little bit older, so I think
yeah,
some of the content can be, I guess, a little kind of like bordering on that adolescent teenage sort of dialogue, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, we even saw a touch of that when they brought the kids back for It Chapter 2, where all of a sudden they're starting to look a little older, and you're like, all right, well, I guess remembering things a little differently now. But, it is what it is. You can only slow down the passage of time for so long. Next up, we have 6 Underground, which is the new Ryan Reynolds movie. It's kind of a spy-looking thriller type, almost pseudo James Bondy with a touch of like Italian Job flair to it. I don't know. What do you make of this one? This one's going to be on Netflix. So does it get your vote?
Yes. It reminds me of The Losers, if you remember that movie.
Oh, I remember The Losers. It's DC, baby.
I actually like that movie.
It is good.
But yeah, this it kind of reminds me of that. Kind of like they're just doing their own thing. There's Ryan Reynolds is in there. The one woman that was in Inglourious Basterds is in there. She's a great actress.
That. Okay.
I want to see her like do more stuff, or maybe I want to see more of her stuff because she was really good in that movie.
Yeah, totally. I didn't catch that. So, this one seems kind of ho-hum. I'm giving it a thumbs down, not because it doesn't have like name recognition and not because of anything with Ryan Reynolds. I just feel like, kind of like.
Is it Fast and Furious combined with James Bond?
No, I was gonna say actually more like if you remember Triple Frontier, that movie we talked about at the beginning of I think this year, with like Ben Affleck and Oscar Isaac and a bunch of those guys like Charlie Hunnam.
Yeah, okay.
It's a good movie, and I was surprised how much I liked it by the time it was done, and I'm hoping this does that for me too. But I think for a lot of people, there was something missing in it that really lacked that punch and made people go like, oh, this is something fresh. It's something interesting. And I think it was really the star power that was keeping people's attention. And that's what I feel like with this. The problem is it feels like, aside from the actress you just mentioned, I'm only really seeing Ryan Reynolds in it. And I'm not feeling like that's enough to sell me on this sort of franchise. So we'll see. It could be really fantastic, but as of right now, I'm giving it a thumbs down. I think it's just something people could pass on.
Okay.
But you're giving thumbs up, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then lastly, a new trailer that I saw on our last screening of Joker, Guy Ritchie's new movie, The Gentleman. What do you think about this one?
That movie looks really good too.
Yeah, me too. I don't know what it is about the level of flair and energy that Guy Ritchie brings. There's some level of it's like frenetic energy with his characters. They always just feel alive and constantly moving. And there's just a certain life and energy to the way that he brings these characters to life. I just really think that this movie has something. I don't really know 100% of what's going on, I'll be honest. So when I actually get into the meat of the story, I could be turned off. But I don't know. It just seems like a bunch of like British wise guys, fucking up some people's lives in a comical manner, and I'm kind of down for it. I don't know. What about you?
I still I'm looking forward to see it.
You're all in. Okay, cool. So that is our roundup of trailer talk at number 4. At number 3, we've got some news on the Universal side. Now, it's interesting because we'll kind of come back to it at number 1 because there's a very big thing that gets wrapped up in all that. But first of all, we've got Paul Feig doing Dark Army for Universal, which is supposedly the classic, kind of Universal monsters, which they tried to kind of revitalize and it didn't work. And we'll get to that in a second. But bringing those classic monsters to life against some new creatures. My only problem with that, though, is the new creatures are going to be created supposedly by Paul Feig. So do you think this one is more like for laughs, or is this going to be something that's to be taken seriously?
I hope it's something to be taken seriously, but I have a sneaking feeling that there's going to be too much humor.
Yeah, I just don't want to see like Melissa McCarthy turn out to be like the Wolf Woman or whatever and just doing slapstick comedy or pratfalls the whole time. Like, I actually kind of want to see Paul Feig take the content seriously. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the little levity. You know, like Sam Raimi came from a horror background, but he knew a way to interject levity into his stuff and made it very enjoyable despite all the graphic nature around it. I think, you know, you can even push a little bit more on the comical side, just as long as it doesn't become a joke in and of itself by the time it's released, because I don't need to see, you know, Dracula or some like mummy character or whatever just falling all over themselves. It's not interesting. But if it's kind of this versus thing where, what was the movie from the 80s? It's Monster Squad, right? Did you ever see Monster Squad?
Maybe.
I saw it like once and I barely remember it, but I know it's like a cult thing for so many people. But, you know, if they make them kind of cool, but also kind of like, I don't want to say superheroes, but like defenders in their own way against some weird oncoming threat. There was an animated movie that was kind of like that. It was called Monsters vs. Aliens that DreamWorks did. If they made it similar to that, but kind of brought the scale down to a more human size instead of these ungodly creatures, I think that sort of concept could work, and maybe that's where they're going with this. How would you like to see it play out for this monster movie, Dark Army?
Cut down on the humor just a little bit.
Okay. The humor that we know nothing of specifically, but yes.
Well, I mean, just in a
I know, I'm just busting your chops, yeah.
You know what I would kill for? A Bruce Campbell cameo.
Oh, you know, interesting on that. I didn't even add it into the notes, but Bruce Campbell reportedly trying to get another Army of the Dead, Evil Dead kind of movie going again. So we could get another movie in that franchise from him, but that's a semi-related but actually unrelated kind of thing. I think that's under Universal, though, so yeah. We'll tie it in. Why not? But would you want to see more from Bruce Campbell? Or at least that franchise?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as we move on through the number 3 with the Universal stuff, we found out that not only is Paul Feig doing kind of the monstery stuff, but we've got Jordan Peele signing a 5-year deal with Universal. I'm thinking they could be starting to build a monster universe here. What about you?
So, well, we already saw how this panned out once before.
Oh, well, yes, but they didn't have like a real structure to it. I think they're not saying monster universe because they've got Lee Winnell, the guy from the Saw franchise. He's making The Invisible Man, which we've talked about before, but they're not coming straight out in a press release saying we're like making a dark universe. And like, I think they're doing it very subtly. Like, well, this is just its own standalone movie, and here's a standalone movie over here. And then they're going to slowly put these things out, see if the audience likes them, and then go, oh, stop the presses. Did you know these were all connected this whole time? And then it's going to be a universe. They want that money so bad.
It's going to fail a second time.
I don't think that it will. I think they're putting the right pieces together because what they're trying to do, which they didn't do the first time. The first time around, they tried to make the characters into superheroes, which they're really not. Let's just be honest. I think they're being respectful to the material. They're keeping the budgets low so that they can come out and say, hey, the movie made money. I mean, like Joker alone, we're going to get to it in a little bit, but like that movie in its weekend alone outdid its overall cost for that movie. I mean, which is insane. And if they could apply that same level of, well, I mean, I don't know how you do controversy with that, but if you could apply the same level of appeal to it and have these movies come in, you know, be like a $100 million film or even less, and then make, 3 times that, then the movie's profitable, and then here you go, and you're off to the races with a MonsterVerse franchise down the road. So it's doable. I think they're making the right moves. They're getting people who know horror. I mean, like Jordan Peele, Leigh Whannell. I don't know about Paul Feig. That's a whole different conversation. And then our third one in here, which is M. Night Shyamalan, who is going to be joining up with them over on the Universal side to do 2 pictures, one in 2021 and the other one in 2023. They're reportedly, quote unquote, all original films, even though there's 2. But I think it could lend itself to either another one of the, kind of him touching into the superhero genre, or him making a monster movie. And I know that feels a little biased because those are the things I want to see. But I also like when he does weird things. Like, people hate Lady in the Water, but I actually kind of enjoyed that movie. And the one with the woods, I can't think of it now. The one that came after Signs, The Village. You remember The Village? Yeah.
Yes.
I really only like them for the twists of those movies, but if they bring him in, I could see a really cool horror, like, monster movie or whatever coming out of him. I guess really to wrap our third segment up here, what do you think this should be? What do you think Universal should do to really, bring themselves back up into the light? Do they need to go dark to get themselves back into the light, or should they approach this differently?
Don't worry about making a massive film franchise. They just need to focus on making good movies first.
Agreed.
And everything will follow after.
We can only hope, as long as there's not some weird level of mismanagement. All right, and then as we move on to number 2, basically here I just wanted to go over some of the acquisitions and big moves that are happening in the industry, mostly revolving around streaming content. At the number 2, I wanted to mention that Seinfeld, everyone knows what Seinfeld is. They are finally moving over to Netflix. Now, for most people, they know that it was originally on Crackle, which I'm pretty much the only one who watches that. And then they moved it over recently to Hulu. So that was such a big deal. And now Netflix has it. And I think the reason is because they're going to be losing so many of these other big franchises like The Office, and I think Parks and Rec still might be on there or whatever. But those are slowly disappearing and going to these big networks that we've been talking about and their streaming platforms. So now they've got Seinfeld. Do you think this is a good move for Netflix, or is this them grasping at straws?
I think it's a good move because it will possibly bring in an older audience.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you think that it's going to be sustaining for them? Do you think the investment that they're putting into this is worth it in the end?
I think it will.
Yeah.
Seinfeld's a pretty classic TV show, right up there with like Friends in the Office.
Exactly. Cheers.
In terms of
if
you were watching on within Netflix's own numbers, I guess.
Right. So I actually have to agree with you. I think this is a good way to sustain long-term viewership, because I think Netflix's model is to keep generating new content, but they have to keep some level of like standards in there so that people can do what I do half the time. Like, there are a lot of nights where I just want to zone out after a long day, 9 to 5, all that job stuff. And I put on like 3 episodes of American Dad and I just kind of zone out for a little bit. And that's kind of like my thing. And I know for a lot of people that would be Seinfeld or Friends or Cheers or whatever. So I think this is a perfect move for them. I'm not sure that the investment is 100% there, but Netflix seems to just be throwing money at the wall to see if any of it sticks. And it looks like this could be a move that works for them. I was just very surprised, and I brought this up honestly because I heard some negativity about it that, that they, as I was kind of implying before, someone said that they were grasping for straws because this was like the only big thing that was left. But I don't.
There's other big TV shows that are out there that they could have acquired the rights to stream.
Yeah.
But I still think Seinfeld is a pretty big name in itself.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a good get for them at the end of the day. So I give them kudos for that. I just really hope that they do find a way to keep it on Hulu, because that was my way of really watching it. I got so in my niche about that.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, Ryan.
I know. So next up in the number 2 talk here, we have that HBO Max is making some big moves, on the side here. So one of the big properties that everyone was talking about, like, where's it going to go, who's going to acquire it, was The Big Bang Theory. Now that it had its final season just earlier this year, it was, I think, like hundreds of episodes. I want to say it was like 279 or 78. But they bought the entire library of The Big Bang Theory, and they're going to be putting it on HBO Max, which I know some of the nerd culture, y'all hate it. I get it. If you don't like Big Bang Theory, not a big deal. It's going to keep on entertaining the people that the audience, who loves it. Those people are going to be coming back to it regularly. Like, after I fell out of Big Bang Theory, my mom really got into it, and she was like, "Oh, it reminds me of you." I was like, thanks. So, yeah, I know. That's the true story. I swear to God. And now every time she watches Leonard or Sheldon, she just thinks of me. And I'm like, great, thanks.
She thinks you're a physicist?
Yeah, or that's what she wants me to be. I will say though, fun side note, I picked up just yesterday my Big Bang Theory pop of Leonard Hofstadter as Green Lantern. They did a cosplay episode or whatever, or it was like a costume party.
Okay.
He dresses up. So it's got like him in the Green Lantern suit, but he's got the glasses and he's holding the lantern in his hand, which I don't think any of the other Green Lanterns do. So I was like, damn right, I'm going to pick that up. So that is sitting on our office desk right now as I'm doing the show. But yeah, Big Bang Theory, huge pickup. And then on top of that, we've got Friends also going over to HBO Max. So again, another big franchise being picked up by these big studios who are putting together massive streaming services. Friends means absolutely nothing to me. More like the one that I don't care about. See what I did there? But the next one that I wanted to bring in here is a revival of the Boondocks. And I'm very surprised that they're doing this. Because I thought, based on, anyone who I talked to who actually enjoyed that franchise said that it was good. It ended on a solid note. And I kind of thought of it in the way like Star Wars Clone Wars, where it was like, yeah, they could have gone on for another season, but I didn't think they really needed to. They ended it in a good enough place, and I was fine with that. But as soon as I posted that, there were so many comments, and a lot of people like, oh my gosh, it's back. And people like quote retweeting it and stuff like that off our page. So clearly there is a big enough fan base for this. And I'm glad to see that so many people are happy about it. Do you have any feelings about Boondocks one way or the other?
I have more of an idea of why HBO would be claiming these TV shows. And I think it's possibly because I guess maybe their original content isn't panning out as much as they would like.
Yeah, I would say that, but it also kind of goes back to what I said about having that level of like your standard shows that people go to just for almost background noise to kind of fill out space in your content. I think you just need to have that. And new content only gets you so far because there are the types of people who go in and then go, I don't know about this. It's like I know people who look at today's sitcoms like Superstore or AP Bio or any of these ones and they go, I can't follow all this. I just got done finishing Scrubs or whatever. And they would rather go back and watch Scrubs seasons 1 through 8 or 9 or whatever they did instead of going and watching a new show and taking on new content. So I think this is a good, healthy thing because frankly, if Warner Brothers didn't do it, something or one of these other streams, they would have taken it. Universal
True.
or Disney might have found a way to buy these properties. So I think it allows them to be competitive in the marketplace. Like Disney might have all their things, but then you can go, oh, well, we've got Friends and we've got Big Bang and all this stuff over here. So like I said, I really think it's going to come down to just HBO and Disney just butting heads, just like it is with comic book movies right now. Where, obviously Disney has a lot more of the lion's share, but there's a lot of good stuff over on the other side that really keeps them in contention. All right. I think that is the only thing left on our number 2 talk here. Oh, you know what? One more thing I just wanted to pepper in. Did you know that Netflix's series Glow is coming to a close?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that sad? Have you watched any of the seasons all the way through?
No.
Okay, that's fine. And maybe this speaks more to our wrestling audience rather than our streaming audience, but I love it for both of those reasons. It's a good show, kind of a pseudo period piece, but it's just a lot of fun, and they're ending it on the 4th season, and they're not really canceling it, but they're just saying, we told enough of the story, because they're almost going longer than the show itself actually existed as a wrestling show. So, it's perfectly fine that they're ending it on season 4. So I thought I'd throw that in there before we hit to our number 1. All right. As I said, we are going to number 1, and number 1 is back to the Universal stuff, as NBC/Universal, or even Comcast, or however you want to describe them, their new streaming service is going to be called Peacock. What do you think about this one, Brad?
Why?
Well, that has been their logo for so many years as the national broadcasting company, so I get that. But my question is, why wouldn't you pick something that doesn't have a semi-phallic connotation so that people could just make fun of it all the time?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just too easy. And it's like, did you really try? Did you just kind of think, well, this will work. This is fine. Whatever. Peacock, sure. Like they have the word Comcast. Like it actually has cast in it. You could have done like I don't know, NBC cast or Universal cast or something like that and mixed the two together, and that would have been perfectly fine. But then they do this. I don't really get it. So do you want to know what's actually going to be on NBC's Peacock streaming service when it comes out?
Sure.
Okay,
let's go over it real quick.
So we were talking about classic streaming stuff. They're going to have The Office. They're going to have Parks and Rec. They're going to have Cheers, Frasier, and the thing that might sell me and make me buy it day one, Saturday Night Live. I only say that because I have been frustrated as hell because they only go, I think they go seasons 1 through 5. For some reason, season 8 on Hulu, it's like one episode with like Lily Tomlin, and then it goes season 30 all the way to the present day. I want my Dana Carvey and Mike Myers seasons, and I want them now. And I am so tired of not being able to get them because they used to. I think it was like they used to be on some streaming. I don't know if it was like Netflix or something. And then Yahoo Screen or something like that picked them up. And you could watch them all there, even though the service was kind of shitty. And I was like, okay, this is fine. Even if I get like scattered clips of it, I can go back and reminisce over stuff I love. But I've been waiting for someone to exclusively pick it up. And I think now that it's going directly to NBC, they don't have to worry about all the minutia about like, because I heard like some of the music rights got tied up and some of the jokes weren't to certain standards on Hulu or whatever. So if they put it on NBC's app exclusively, they might bring back the entire catalog. And that's what I want, for good or bad. Because there's a lot of bad in there too. Like if you've ever seen the Steven Seagal episode, like he is notoriously hated for just like not giving two shits about just being on there, like just kind of phoning it in the whole time. And God, I could just really talk about SNL for forever. But of those kind of franchises, is there any of those that you would go back and watch yourself?
Well, Frasier's already on Netflix.
Is it? Oh yeah, I bet you it is. Well, it'll be moving off of Netflix.
Damn, now I gotta go watch all the seasons of that now.
Yep. Well, I did that with Cheers. So yeah, Cheers was not an easy watch.
I'm actually a big fan of the early Saturday Night Live seasons. So
now, when you say early, do you mean early, like seasons 1 through 5 with like Chevy Chase?
I've seen like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. Like I've seen almost all of it.
Yeah, see, I want to go back to the era where like Robert Downey Jr. was in the cast and things like that, which was like in the 80s and stuff. There was some really bad seasons that had really good comedians that were in their cast that I think they just kind of got lost to the sands of time and everything. And if they bring back those ones, for good or bad, I just want to see either it gloriously fail or just kind of make me chuckle just for one random skit that they do. But just to see it, or even just for the Eddie Murphy stuff. Moving on from there, though, we have the reboot section of what they're going to be doing with Peacock. They're going to be rebooting Saved by the Bell, Punky Brewster, and Battlestar Galactica. Do any of those excite you?
Battlestar Galactica. That's about it.
Okay, I've heard that the most recent series that ended probably like 5 or 6 years ago now was really good. And one of these days I'm willing to give it a try. It's kind of in that weird space where like Lost or one of those shows that had like a series run that I just never got behind. Like I'd finally get back to it. So maybe I'll give Battlestar Galactica a try. The reason I'm interested in this one though, it's got the creator of Mr. Robot behind it. So
okay.
It could be pretty good. Punky Brewster is being kind of rebooted. And it's going to be done with, I think it's Michael Schur, the one who's doing like The Office and stuff like that. So again, another really smart, creative type that'll be behind it. I just don't know that Punky Brewster needed to be made again. And then Saved by the Bell. Have you heard what they're going to do with this reboot?
Not even interested.
Okay.
I never watched it.
I'll just say it quickly just because it's so ridiculous. So it's about Slater and I can't think of her name, Jessie. The two of them living their life as adults or whatever. And Zach Morris apparently exists in this universe as they've all grown up now. Zach apparently is the mayor or the governor of California or whatever, and has been such a shitty governor that he's like closed down all the schools or defunded them and like made the entire state of California a complete shit show. So, I mean, I don't know really what that has to do with Saved by the Bell, but I really just want to see what the hell the show is going to be. But yeah, it's probably going to be bad. I'll just say that.
That sounds weird.
It absolutely sounds weird. And then when they asked Mark Paul Gosselaar, like, hey, yeah, so how do you feel about bringing Zach back to life? He's like, they haven't asked me. So clearly they're shopping this idea around a bit still. And then lastly, the studios that are going to be involved with this, that gives me a little bit more faith that we're going to get some good stuff content-wise, is going to be Universal, Focus Features, DreamWorks, and Illumination behind, the films that you'll be able to see when Peacock debuts. So does this give you a thumbs up? Do you feel like you would be willing to at least invest in it for a month or so, or do you just want to pass on it altogether?
If they have a 30-day trial, sure.
Okay. I mean that's doable too. I might just do like the trial run, but I mean, I think they just need to flesh out the catalog a little bit. Like we're seeing it now more with HBO Max. They're going to be debuting, I think it's spring of 2020. So as we get closer to that, they're going to start announcing more long-term series, short-term series, announce how DC Universe kind of mixes in with all that. And I think it'll be interesting, but yeah. It's definitely a ways away for Peacock. So, how about we move on from all the miscellaneous stuff? And I'm surprised we got through that as quickly as we did, frankly. DC or Marvel for you, Brad?
Let's do DC.
DC it is. And boy, this one's another big one. So, starting off here, we have...
Speed run.
Yeah, right. So TV talk, as we like to do. DC shows are all coming back. As of last night, we had Batwoman premiere. I won't go into details about it, but I'll just say for most people who probably thought one way or another about it, you're right. If you didn't like it, you're probably not going to like it anymore based on what they did. I found the Batwoman, Ruby Rose, was a little bit more likable. Some of those kind of cringy scenes that I think people took issue with, I think either they reshot them with her being a little less dickish, maybe. I think she came across better when you hear it all the way through, like what she's trying to describe. But yeah, I think if you didn't like it or you thought that you were just going to absolutely hate it, you're probably going to feel the same way. As far as the shows, though, she is now here. Supergirl was last night. They got a new villain, which I'm kind of interested in. There's a lot to go with that series. We have The Flash premiering on October 8th. Oh, wait. That's weird. So that would be tomorrow. Or wait, is that tonight? Shoot, what is today? I forgot what today is.
It's the 7th.
Today's the 7th. Yeah, okay. So Black Lightning came out today. Flash is tomorrow. Arrow is October 15th. I don't know if they've announced the premiere of Legends yet because I think it's going to come on later in the season, but I could be off on that one. Either way, though, lots to come for DC, and we're just getting started. I want to get into the more important thing, though, with all the DC TV talk, which is Crisis on Infinite Earths, and there's been a lot. So we've got Brandon Routh, we've got Tom Welling, and we've got Tyler Hoechlin, which I could forget that last one personally, but the three of them have come together, and we are seeing them, all three Supermen. The only thing we haven't seen, though, is Tom Welling in the suit, but we did get to see him, and recently announced cast member Erica Durance, who was Lois with him on Smallville, taking photos on the farm and all that stuff. As far as though the Superman stuff goes, which has you the most excited right now?
The Crisis event sounds cool. And I still kind of like Legends a little bit.
Oh, okay, that's good. No, I mean, like, in terms of Superman, like the three that I mentioned, who has you most excited to see?
Oh, it's Ralph for sure.
Yep, same here. Enough said. But I will say some people have been kind of making me get a little bit more hype for Tom Welling because he never really put on the full suit. And I want to see what that would actually look like on him or what they plan to do with him. Hopefully they don't just keep him in like farmer clothes the whole time. Moving on, though, like I said, Erica Durance will be playing Lois. We'll have a second Lois, obviously the one that's Tyler Hoechlin's better half, who's pregnant with their son, which we know from last year's big event. I wanted to say that there was going to be no Lex, and just before we got on here, there was this shot from behind the scenes that I shared with Brad. Everyone knows that Arrow is going on right now, and the Arrow is a huge thing because it's the final season. I guess Steven got roughed up, Stephen Amell, and whatever the scene was, he decided to post this little side shot. And to the right of him, when you're looking at the photo, is a list of a certain amount of characters. And we see two examples of Lex Luthor on this piece of paper. So is this a sign from him that we might actually be getting Michael Rosenbaum, who had recently denied that he was going to be a part of this? Do you think he's in or do you think he's out?
I think he might be in.
I think so too. And I think it's, whether he said he was in or out at the time, I think they found a way probably to interject him in because there's too many big names being attached to this. Like we mentioned, Kevin Conroy, of all people, is getting to be Bruce Wayne to some extent. They're bringing back the original Robin from the live action series, Burt Ward. They're just pulling every name from DC's history in some capacity and bringing them into this. So I feel like whether it's a personal reason or not, Michael Rosenbaum should just be involved, even if he has this, they didn't want to pay me enough, or there was some sort of reason. Just do it for the love of going back to that character again. That being said, we also have more castings. We've got a new casting of Osric Chow, who I am not familiar with his previous work, but he's going to be playing Ryan Choi, which is the Atom that succeeded Brandon Routh's version of the Atom, the original, Ray Palmer. And I'm sure it'll happen probably during the course of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and then maybe we'll get Legends of Tomorrow will have a new Atom, and it'll be the Ryan Choi version, which is fine with me too, because that's a great character. From there, we found out that Ashley Scott, who originally played Huntress on the Birds of Prey TV series, that was like early days of CW. And, it didn't last very long, and it wasn't that great of a show, but she definitely made a vivid impression for a lot of people. So they're bringing her back, and I think that's kind of cool because Brad and I were actually talking before we got on here. We wanted to see the Huntress, Jessica DeGao, who was in Arrow season 1, I think you said, Brad?
Yes.
Yeah, wanted to see her return, and maybe she will. Maybe they're keeping her a secret, but I'm surprised Arrow never really did do a good job bringing her back because she was a really interesting character. But yeah, they're bringing back Huntress, at least in some capacity, even if it is the classic one. And then lastly, to kind of round out all of the Arrowverse news with Crisis, we've got Audrey Marie Anderson, who most people will know as Lila from the show. She's going to be playing Harbinger during the Crisis. Now, I said this to Brad. I think this is going to be like a Earth 3 or, some sort of doppelganger from a different universe that's going to be involved. And Harbinger will probably be, for Brad in this case, it'd be kind of like a Madam Web character on the Marvel side of things, where she kind of sees the fabric of time as it's changing, and she tries to be, or maybe like the Watcher, for example, where she just kind of sees how these events are unfolding. I mean, she might get physically involved because Harbinger has like her own super strength and flight and all that stuff, but I could see her being more of this like oracle of what's going on and what could be if things go differently. So I'm glad to see her get a role, because her just as Lila just seems so ho-hum here that it doesn't feel like she would be needed. The other thing too, I want to say, I genuinely believe this in the depths of my soul. I think we're getting Diggle as Green Lantern by the end of the Crisis. Do you think it's going to happen this time around?
That would be awesome if it did. I'm not betting on it, though.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing. Do you remember the last event that they did when they made mention of it?
Gosh, which event was it? I can't remember.
From last year when they did the big event where they. Yeah.
I don't remember if they actually said something about that.
So long story short, the original Flash from the 90s series, John Wesley Shipp's character, he comes back and he says, "Hey, John, how you doing? You look different without your suit on, and where's your ring?" And they just left it like that, but they didn't say Green Lantern. They didn't do anything like that. And they kind of made everyone who's been fan casting Diggle that way for the longest time go, "Oh, they're going to do it." And they didn't, come straight out and say it, but I think they're going to pull that trigger because Mark Guggenheim, who's been behind all these shows for the longest time, has been saying that, we're keeping some of our cards close to our chest. We want to keep some surprises from getting out into the public. I think that, or I don't know, getting like Henry Cavill to show up as his Superman would be like the only things that I could think of them doing at this point that could make people go more wow than, Brandon Routh as Superman again, or Tom Welling coming back to reprise his role. So I think those things are happening, but we'll see how it all plays out. Lastly, with the TV talk here, we've got some more with DC TV, which is Arrowverse could be getting a spinoff, which would have Kate McNamara, Katie Cassidy, and Juliana Harkavy potentially reprising their roles and keeping the story of, I guess you'd call it like a Birds of Prey show. Do you want this to happen or no?
If only if Katie Cassidy gets a proper storyline as Black Canary.
Yeah, I'm really curious how this final season is going to go, because it seems like, without really spoiling it, they're trying to push her into classic Black Canary territory while also pushing Juliana Harkavy into more of like a detective role. Like, okay, clearly people didn't like you in this particular role. Let's just give them as close to classic Black Canary as we can get before we get the show to close. But, if they make her more of a mentor to Kat if Oliver does in fact die, and it's just the girls kind of taking on. I'm kind of fine with that. Personally, I cannot stand Kat's acting. I love Juliana. I love Katie Cassidy, but there's something about Catherine and her acting that is just so freeform network or lower budget network kind of stuff that I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the direction they're giving her or what, but she is not the lead of a show, in my opinion. And that, I hate to say that, but truth is she's just not a strong enough actor from what I've seen. So I don't know that I want that spinoff unless they push Katie Cassidy out in front and they make it more about Black Canary. But as we go on, Roy Harper will be returning as well. Colton Haynes will be joining the Arrow fray for this last season, and I'm sure he'll probably pop into the Crisis as well. And then lastly, I know I mentioned Batwoman a little bit before. They have cast Gabriel Mann as Thomas Elliot / Hush for those who read the comics and everything. Do you think that adding Thomas Elliot is a good idea or a bit of a reach? Because I know you have thoughts about Batwoman.
I don't know. I don't think it's much of a reach.
Okay, that's good. I mean, anything that I can slightly sell you on Batwoman for, so I'll take that win if I can get it. That being said, though, I'm not expecting him to actually turn into Hush unless they go like season 3 and they're running out of villains. But yeah, for now, he's just regular old Thomas, probably just looking for his friend Bruce. And as we move on from there, there's the DC Universe stuff. So I will quickly just say Titans is awesome. It starts off a little rocky in the first episode. A lot of changes. I think they did a little bit of a writers and production team that kind of got switched around from season 1 to season 2. So there's a transition. It's not a hard one, but you can definitely see that they went in a more bold direction, I guess, and a more fun direction with season 2. And it's a really good show. I cannot recommend it enough. I think the only thing DC more that I like right now is the Joker movie that just came out. We also found out through New York Comic Con, which just ended this weekend, that Stargirl is coming as of 2020. So early in the probably spring or even late winter, we'll be getting Stargirl, which is great because I've been waiting for the series for what feels like forever. But it has finished and we're going to be seeing it very soon. We also found out that Harley Quinn is coming November 29th, and it will be the animated one that most people have already heard about or seen some clips of at this point. We also know that there's 2 new shows that are going to be joining DC Universe, and I think Brad and I personally need to get in on the ground floor with this one. It's called DCU, probably a playoff on the DC Universe itself and its initials, but it's a competition where basically you pitch video content to DC, and then I guess like the 3 finalists get a chance at a DC Universe pilot. So, Brad, I think we're going to have to start cooking up some ideas while we're down in LA and see if we can get some together. And lastly, to do all the DC TV stuff, we've got Bizarro TV. Now, Brad, I'm going to ask you, what do you think Bizarro TV is?
Basically just the DC version of What If.
Kind of, yeah, in a sense where maybe it's not what they wouldn't or would have done, but we're going to get some weird characters that we don't normally get to see and get to tell some stories about them. So there's going to be Ambush Bug, Space Cabbie, The Creeper, and a character Slam Bradley, which again is another deep cut. But all these characters and more will be on this new show that will combine live action, some cartoon and animation, and then weirdly tagged in there as well with the description puppets. So I don't know how puppets figure into this. I just want to see one of those, like, I almost want it to be like Adult Swim. You know how they do those weird scattered shows that are like 10, 15 minutes or less. And it just seems like a bunch of nonsense, but it's like a really cool way to show the Creeper. And then it's just like a puppet show that just has him like going through the streets of Gotham or whatever. I just want to see what they do with it. There's a million things that they could, play with. I say have them go at it. anything that we just talked about with the TV that really interested you going forward? What are you excited for most on the TV side? There was a lot.
The Bizarro one sounds cool.
Yeah.
I think that one sounds the most promising, I suppose. It's so weird.
Brad's totally humoring me right now. He's like, yeah, that was just the last one you mentioned. Let's just go with it. But no, you're probably right, though. I think it has the most potential to be something really interesting. So at number 3, though, we get back into the movie side of things. And interestingly enough, the animated movies are getting a pretty solid cast for Superman Red Son. We're talking everybody. They're even down to Jon Stewart Green Lantern. They've cast pretty much everyone you could think of for this movie, and I cannot wait to see what they do for Red Son, because it's such a big movie in the DC canon in terms of stories, and I think they're trying to bring back a lot of classic talent to kind of do the voices that we're familiar with, but just them in different roles. Obviously, Superman being a Soviet and that sort of thing. So. Okay. I cannot wait for that one, and we're getting that one a lot sooner than later. Then the other one that we got kind of announced, for lack of a better word, at New York Comic Con is Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. So the original report was that it was Justice League Dark Apocalypse, and I was like, that feels a little bit kind of like X-Men Apocalypse to me. I don't know if I love that name, but Apocalypse War means that they're going to be fighting on Darkseid's planet, which I would love to see what the Dark Justice League would do in the face of all of that chaos. That, do they have the ability to beat Darkseid and that sort of thing? Not a lot of description about it, but some cool art nonetheless. Between the two of those, which interests you the most? Dark, almost trippy, otherworldly stuff, or alternate universe Superman story?
I would say the dark. Was it dark? Was it Dark Universe?
Justice League Dark Apocalypse War.
Yeah. Apocalypse. I think the Apocalypse War sounds cool.
Yeah, I think it has the potential to be really cool. Actually, in the art, I got a little excited because with them doing all the Justice League stuff, they don't usually show some of the, for lack of a better word, I'll call them ancillary characters. And then I saw Hawkman in the background. I was like, oh, they're going to give Hawkman a chance in this movie. I'm all in for this one. So I got a little excited about that. But, I mean, I'm pretty split down the middle for both of these. I want them both for completely different reasons, and I'm ready. Next, at number 2, is a little bit of Superman talk, and it comes at the cooperation of J.J. Abrams now joining up with Warner Media. It's about $250 million is the reported amount that they paid him to be a part of television, film, and other miscellaneous content to help drive Warner Media forward. As we mentioned before, with the streaming races kind of building up the way that they are, they want to get the biggest talent they can, just like Disney's trying to do on their side of things. The most important of which, and this is more of a rumor and not completely confirmed, but there was some reporters, I think like Variety and Hollywood Reporter, mentioning some stuff about capes very casually. I want to bring it to you, Brad, because there was an infamous script that floated around, which was not a great one, that J.J. Abrams was a part of pre Man of Steel and post Superman Returns, called Superman Flyby. And a lot of people didn't like it, almost like the way the Tim Burton Superman with Nicolas Cage was going to go. Like, it took a lot of bold leaps, no pun intended, and it just would not have probably made people happy. So do you think that J.J. Abrams is the right person to steer maybe not only the DC universe, but Superman as a character going forward?
I'm going to have to say no.
Okay.
I don't think, if he was doing something in the vein of the whole Nicolas Cage, Tim Burton kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different. I get it.
Right.
But if your fan base isn't really open to that at all, regardless of whether you think it's the right direction or not, I don't know if it's the best decision to kind of go that route.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a hard thing with J.J. Abrams because I like some of his stuff. Like I think I mentioned, oh shoot, I can't remember it now. It wasn't District 8. It was shoot, help me out here. The
District 9?
No. The movie, the period piece.
Super 8.
Super 8. Thank you. I was confusing it with District 9. But yeah, it was Super 8 and some of his other movies. I think he's had really good stuff that wasn't connected to other franchises. When he gets his hands on a franchise, I think his biggest creative force, to put it simply, is nostalgia. I think he really likes to dive back into the things that he remembers growing up as a fan to make people happy. But I don't think the stories he creates are 100% respectful to the material. Like I know a lot of people had their problems with how Star Wars went. They had problems with the way that the Star Trek movies went, especially because like Star Trek started turning into Star Wars. And even like the liberties that he was taking with the Superman flyby script, it just seemed like he didn't really truly understand the character at all. It was more like he saw a picture of it in his way. Kind of like when I think about Green Lantern, I think about Green Lantern in a very specific way, but there could be someone out there who's a bigger diehard Green Lantern fan than myself who would rather see maybe like the Green Lantern Corps, for example, or maybe the Golden Age Green Lantern, Alan Scott, and would look at mine as very fan servicey based on the way that I think of that character, not as it respects the material, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying he would do a bad job because he did a good job with like Felicity and Alias. Mission Impossible 3, I think, was at least a better version of that franchise than Mission Impossible 2 was.
Yeah.
Even though I have a soft spot for Mission Impossible 2, as bad as it is, it's just, I can't stop watching that movie. Yeah, so I don't know if he's the right choice, but then they said Green Lantern to me as a thing that he could be attached to. And his level of appreciation for out of space content is cool. I just don't want to see Green Lantern turn into Star Trek, which was basically turning into Star Wars. I want it to be respectful to the material, but I do feel like he'd make a really cool outer space epic if they did put him on that. So I'm kind of two minds with it, but you know, worst case scenario, at least we get another Green Lantern movie. So I can live with that. What would you like to see J.J. Abrams do now that he's with Warner Brothers? Superhero or non-superhero? We'll keep it simple.
I'll say non-superhero material.
Cool. Okay, and let's move on to number one, because obviously we still have quite a bit. So at the number one, we've got the Birds of Prey trailer. We got a bunch of promotional stuff, and then it dropped just 24 hours later. What do you think of the Birds of Prey trailer?
Looks interesting. Not a whole lot of, it's a trailer, so we're not really going to get a lot of story detail about it. Seems to be very comedic.
Interesting. I have a lot of different thoughts. Yeah.
I know the character of Harley Quinn is sort of kind of like a zany character, so there's going to be, I guess, humor
off
injected
the wall
regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just feels like Suicide Squad all over again.
Oh, good, because I thought you were going away from that. I thought you were saying like you didn't see the Suicide Squad comparison. I felt it. That is my favorite thing about this, and I was so worried because again, you have to see where I'm coming from. This is like I didn't hate the quote unquote Snyderverse of it all, where everything had like a darker filter on it. Yes, obviously some more color would be appreciated, and it needed a touch of levity to keep it going. But it, I don't think that Suicide Squad was bad. It just was tampered with so much from its original cut that it it went into a direction that it didn't need to, and the movie suffered as a result. Same thing with Batman v Superman. If they had just put out the ultimate cut, it probably would have made a lot more money and been better received by critics and audiences, and then it probably wouldn't have been shit on so hard. I mean, we still would have got Martha till the end of time, but we probably would have got a lot less of the flack, and maybe a legitimate sequel that still would have had Zack Snyder attached, and it probably wouldn't have gone as chaotic as it's become. That being said, I still enjoyed Suicide Squad for what it was. Margot Robbie notwithstanding, I liked her. You know, obviously I've said before, I liked Will Smith as Deadshot, and then I liked the addition of Jay Hernandez as El Diablo. And then there were some other good pieces in that movie too, but it feels like this is a spiritual successor, because a lot of the conversation was, is the DC EU, as some people will refer to it, is it continuing on, or are we scrapping it and just kind of going into weird solo titles? And this genuinely feels like a spiritual successor to Suicide Squad, so much so that there's resentment about her and the Joker. Like, she clearly had a falling out with him. We've talked about the photos where he's literally throwing her clothes out a window, whether that's Jared Leto or not. Fingers crossed for me personally that it is. But my biggest problem with this is actually the fact that it doesn't feel like it's Birds of Prey. I understand from a marketing perspective that continuing it on from Suicide Squad, people are like, oh, I remember Harley. You know, even if I've never picked up a comic book, I saw that movie back in 2016. This is my re-entry into her. This is basically her sequel. And a lot of people don't know what Birds of Prey is. I just feel bad because we got almost no dialogue from Journey Smollett, who's playing Black Canary, and then we got a little bit of dialogue, I think, from Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Huntress, and then a little bit of dialogue from why do I want to say Hugh Jackman? Obi-Wan Kenobi, help me out here.
Come on, sound it out now.
I can't think of his name. I'm sorry. My brain is shorting out here.
Ewan McGregor.
Thank you, Ewan McGregor. Which I know there's going to be a lot of controversy because apparently he has this relationship with Zaz, who we see a touch of in the trailer. And then some reports are saying that now they've cut that romance between them and all this stuff. So we'll see. But I wanted to get an idea of like what their actual story is, to kind of your point. It doesn't seem like it just seems like, oh, you have a thing, you have a thing. Well, I guess we're going to be working together on this thing. And it's to take down this guy who I didn't really get a touch of his evil or his plan. So I'm not sure what the big score to settle is with all of this, but I'm sure it'll make sense when we get the second trailer, and probably like Suicide Squad, it'll get lighter and lighter as we get closer to the release of that film. And then lastly, as we kind of round this out here, we got the Suicide Squad, and they are officially filming now. Did you get to see some of the cast for this movie?
I think I heard some about it, but I don't think I went in depth and read the entire thing.
Oh no, it's fine. So a lot of the people that you know were going to be a part of it are, we've got like Jai Courtney returning as Captain Boomerang. We've got Joel Kinnaman, who will be reprising his role as Rick Flag. I'm trying to think of other ones that are returning. We obviously know that Viola Davis will be back in her role. And then we've got Margot Robbie, who will be back as well, which is interesting because that's basically another sequel for her. But then here's all the newbies. We've got David Dastmalchian, who you'll know from either the Dark Knight movies, Ant-Man, or he was actually Joker on Gotham.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
okay.
He's a good actor. John Cena is going to be in this, rumored to be a character named Peacemaker. I don't know about that one. I'm still kind of... I have thoughts on that one. I'll get into another episode. Joaquin Cosio, who I'm not familiar with. Nathan Fillion, who has people talking all over again like he's going to be Green Lantern. And as much as I want that, it's probably not in a Suicide Squad film. Then we were going to have Mei Ling Ning, who I don't know a lot of her work. I love this one though. Flula Borg. Do you know who this is?
Flula Borg?
He's this very German comedian. He's always on Conan. If you ever get a chance to see his stand-up, he's so proudly German that it's almost insultingly funny. And I just love this guy. He's just absurd in the best kind of way. Then there's Sean Gunn, obviously, who's going to be a part of it because his brother is making the movie. I don't know what he'll be playing, but I can't wait to see it. Juan Diego Boto, who I'm not familiar with his work, frankly. Storm Reed, who is a young actress who's apparently going to be playing Idris Elba, who I was going to bring up in a little bit, is supposedly his character's daughter, and we'll get to that in a second. Then there's Pete Davidson from SNL, so funny guy as well. Taika Waititi is going to be in this movie, which, I mean, I'm sure that's going to sell tickets for a lot of people right there. Alice Braga, who I think the show on USA that she's in is Queen of the South, which is basically like Breaking Bad, but kind of like a Mexican cartel version. And she's like the head of the organization. So cool. I think she's great. Steve Agee, who you would have seen in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. He's kind of the heavyset guy who was one of the Ravagers. You'll know him when you see him. Very funny guy. Tanashi Kahese, I don't know him very well. Daniela Melchior, who is an up-and-coming actress who is making a name for herself. They said she's going to be gender swapped and play Ratcatcher, which I think that could be kind of interesting. Peter Capaldi, who I personally believe is going to be a character from DC lore that I can get to maybe on our next episode. But a lot of people are saying he's this character named Simon. I don't believe that for one second. He doesn't come across like that. I think if anything, he might be closer to more like Vertigo. But we'll talk about that maybe on next episode. Julio Ruiz, don't know his work very well. Jennifer Holland, not very familiar with her work either. Like I said, Viola Davis, Idris Elba, Margot Robbie, and then to round it all out, Michael Rooker. Do you think we're going to get a really fun character from Michael Rooker, or he's going to be a bad guy in this one?
I'm hoping bad guy.
I don't know. If he shows up or even makes any sort of Mary Poppins reference, this movie is 100% sold for me, and I am all in for it. But that being said, though, that is our roundup of DC stuff. Are you ready to get into some Marvel, Brad?
Let's do it.
All right, Marvel it is. And not a lot with Marvel. Sorry, Marvel fans. I tried to dig up some real stuff, but I only found what I found. So we've got TV Talk at number 3. Ghost Rider has been canceled. Yay or nay, Brad? I know you want a Ghost Rider.
I'm going to say kind of yay because they were just going to try to use
Robbie Reyes.
They're going to try to use Robbie Reyes, and not that I wouldn't like to see the story. It's just I don't see him as a very compelling character.
I like him in that version. I like the character as a whole. What I think is a problem is the fact that it was connected to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I'm sorry to be shitting on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for the upteenth time, but I think he deserved a real, true origin and a way that made you, from the second he walked on screen, make you go, this guy is fucking awesome. And it's like putting, I don't know, like Darkseid in the middle of a Batman v Superman movie when there was no build to it. Like, it's cool, but like it didn't feel right for what they were doing. Like, I wanted to have a reason to care if you put Darkseid into a Batman v Superman movie, for example. Probably not my best example, I'll be honest, but like the idea is you don't just jump the gun and throw a character in. You want to build up why that character matters, make them look cool, give them the best special effects that you can, and make people go, holy shit, this guy is going to be awesome. Like, as much as I probably shit on Batwoman a little bit, I'm still giving it a chance. And I've got to say, from a visual standpoint, the pilot looks great for that show. And it makes me actually care a little bit more about her because they're taking the time to make me care about her. Same thing for Ghost Rider. I think they want to go and say, we're cutting it off right here. We're going to put it over in Marvel Studios. And then we're going to try and rebuild the idea of Johnny. I always want to say Johnny Storm, but it's Johnny. Come on, Ghost Rider.
Johnny Storm and...
No. It's Johnny Blaze. Sorry, it was killing me there.
Yeah, Johnny Storm is Human Torch.
Yeah, I know. I knew that. That's why I knew I was wrong, because I was like, wait a minute. But yeah, Johnny Blaze. Marvel needs to work on their names for some of these characters, make them a little more different. But nevertheless, I love Johnny Blaze too, and I think reintroducing him without Nicolas Cage is probably a really good way to just kick it off, and then from there, kind of like what they were teasing with those movies, expand it out, get the Ghost Panther or Ghost Rider, with like I can't think of the character name for it, but the old Western one who was riding on in that flaming horse. That one was badass.
You're talking about Sam Elliott's character?
Yeah, he was Sam Elliott's character in that movie. Or even just casually bring in Danny Ketch over time, for example, and just really expand the Ghost Rider universe as it is, and make it really fun and interesting. And I think putting it over on Marvel Studios will help that. That being said, our other TV thing actually just kind of came through New York Comic Con, so this is pretty fresh. We have a trailer and a new poster for Runaways Season 3, which I think we already told our audience is going to have Elizabeth Hurley playing Morgana Le Fay. Are you excited after seeing this trailer for what Season 3 is going to be?
Visually, it looked okay.
I mean, yeah, it's a Hulu budget, so what are you going to do?
Yeah, and I don't know. The story seemed very just over dramatic, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's kid drama, so you're going to get a lot of that. Yeah. The constant theme is kids against their parents, and I get that. They're teenagers, whatever. And it's that rebellious spirit that they have, but there's a darkness that's kind of overtaking some of them, and they're then there's a bit of a discovery that their parents might be like overtaken by, I can't remember if they said if it was some otherworldly force or if they were referring to aliens. But either way, their parents have been corrupted in a different way than they had been in the first season, because in the first season they just had good intentions but were doing bad things. Now it seems like they might be possessed to an extent. So that plus adding Elizabeth Hurley in, I think it gets me interested enough, and them choosing the dark route probably lends itself to having Cloak and Dagger appear, which, man, I still don't know how I feel about Cloak and Dagger, because their show independently is so rough to watch, but maybe putting them in here might not be such a bad thing. What do you think as a whole? Do you want to see Season 3, or do you have no interest whatsoever?
I may read up on the first couple episodes to see, what the general synopsis is to start off with.
Okay.
And then I'll kind of judge, like, oh yeah, maybe it's something I might want to dig into.
All right, that's cool.
Because the trailer didn't really inspire me much.
Yeah, I did get that vibe from you for sure. And then I think really that's it with TV talk, to be honest. Oh, I should mention, I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is now officially done after their next season. So I just watched, I hated to do this because I usually commit to watching things all the way through, but I skipped the last 3 to 4 episodes and then just went straight to the ending because it got so tedious and uninteresting. And honestly, if there's any Marvel fans out there who are seriously, just go back and watch those 3 episodes, I might do it, but I went to the ending. There's some character that's kind of done this thing with Coulson that I won't say because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's not there yet, but it just felt like a way to keep reusing the same people over and over again. Oh, this person's good or this person's bad now. And but they're possessed and it's just I don't care. And then the CGI was so shitty because they go through this wormhole in this one part. And I was just I don't care about any of this, and I want to. Like, I really like a lot of the heroes that they've created. Now, granted, like Yo-Yo, for example, is like a very shitty version of Flash, and maybe Yo-Yo's in the comics, maybe she isn't. I don't really know. And frankly, it's just a bad concept to me. I don't hate her. I just keep looking at their team and I go, is this the best you've got? You know, and that's my biggest problem with it. That, and if Marvel is really behind this, you would think that they would try by maybe their 6th or 7th season to, I don't know, up the production value a little bit. And it just seems like it's getting cheaper and cheaper as each season goes by. So I don't know how their last season, their swan song, is going to go out, but it kind of lends back to my theory that I said that they were trying to see that they could go as long as they possibly could so that they could be in contention with Arrow, because they kind of started around the same time. And I was like, why do they keep this show going? They keep saying ratings suck. We're going to push it to like Friday nights. It's going to die here. And then it's got 2 more seasons beyond that. And I'm like, is it just like some like, you know, arms race between them where they're like, oh, well, you know, you kept your show going 7 or 8 seasons. We're going to try and do the same thing. I don't know. I just will hate to say it, but I think I'll be glad when it's finally done. There's no more Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and we can move on to better content.
Agreed.
I think, yeah, okay. I was going to say, I think you can agree with that one. Let's get off of the TV talk into number 2. At our number 2, we have that Matthew Vaughn is teasing his interest in a Fantastic Four movie. We were going to talk about something else. Maybe we'll save it for next week. But Brad definitely wanted to talk about Fantastic Four. So what do you think about Matthew Vaughn moving on to Fantastic Four, whether it happens or it doesn't? Do you think he's the right man for the job?
I think so. As far as just a general Fantastic Four story,
yeah,
I think it would be really good to give him, I guess, the reins, so to speak.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think that the only way it works for him is if you were to do the long proposed idea that I think the director Peyton Reed was going to do with them, which was kind of a Beatles Hard Day's Night kind of perspective, where it's a period piece, like they were heroes of yesteryear kind of thing. Almost kind of like what Ant-Man did when they flashed back to, the original Ant-Man, where it was him and the Wasp and they were doing their own adventures before all the Avengers stuff took off. Like if they flash back to it and it's all this stuff it was a big deal back in the 60s or the 70s, and you stop some sort of like Cold War threat or I don't know, beat up a bunch of hippies or something like that. I'm cool with that. Like make it a period piece and do all that stuff with it. And then maybe find a way to do like Future Foundation in the future, or I should say in the present day, if it becomes a big deal. But that's the only way I see Matthew Vaughn doing it, because Matthew Vaughn, kind of like in a Guy Ritchie style, is very frenetic with his action and the way that he shoots his movies. But my biggest problem with him is that, well, A, he doesn't do sequels, and if he does, they usually get critically panned because people don't like what he does with them. And he usually is at his best when he's doing period pieces. Like you think about what he's going to be doing with The Kingsman, with X-Men First Class, and other films that he's done in the past too, where there's something about, like the bygone era that seems to speak well to his tonal style. And I just don't think Fantastic Four, outside of what I just described, could work for him. But I could be wrong. I think that Fantastic Four at this point needs to be in the modern day, because I think they need to kick off, especially like Mr. Fantastic. Reed Richards needs to be kind of a new Tony Stark now that we don't have him around anymore, or
True.
Or some sort of, you need that hot shot like Johnny Blaze, or Johnny Storm. Dang it, I knew that was going to happen as soon as I said it. And another strong female character like Sue Richards, to really stand, or Sue Storm, or however you want to characterize her, to be another force for big things in the universe, and especially if they decide to go cosmic and bring in Galactus and all that stuff. I don't think Galactus, because he feels like the next end game for them is to have all the Avengers take down Galactus.
Yes.
If that's the case, I don't think you can fit Galactus or even Silver Surfer in with a 1960s kind of film, unless they're in the 60s and then the sequel they get like lost through time and Captain America themselves into the future or whatever. But that just seems more complicated than it needs to be.
Maybe.
Well,
Yeah,
what would
think
you like to
Matthew
see
Vaughn-
from Matthew Vaughn doing a Fantastic Four movie?
Oh, well, I think just in general, I think Matthew Vaughn, a lot of his movies, he's able to juggle multiple characters well.
I agree with that.
And with having four very iconic characters in upcoming in the MCU,
Yeah.
I just don't. How do you introduce them? I would say.
I think the best way to do Fantastic.
I would say you have Reed Richards.
Yeah.
Was toying around with the quantum realm, and they accidentally came into our I guess the current MCU's universe.
Okay. I mean, that's a thing you could do. I mean, I'm not against that. I think the cool thing that they could do is have Reed Richards be this really up and coming, billionaire, but kind of scatterbrained scientist who makes it rich on some stupid app or something like that. And he buys what becomes the Baxter Building, which was Stark Tower. He buys that building instead of the rumor that it was going to be Norman Osborn who takes over and makes it Oscorp.
Honestly, I think you take a page out of Spider-Man Far From Home. The whole story of Mysterio being the last person on his planet and all the heroes die.
Okay.
I think you actually do something like that.
That could work. I mean, I'm not against that.
Maybe he's got some grudges against some characters, but they're
Sure.
all dead. Plus, they know something that might happen in our time, in the current MCU's timeline.
So they're the warning shot for something that's coming.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not against that. That could work. I don't dislike that. I mean, it would also explain why we hadn't heard about these fantastic heroes, no pun intended, after all the other crazy events that have been happening. But I think you could easily work them into the Marvel Universe, because you could even have them be a tail end of the next Spider-Man movie, which we'll get to in a second here, where like Spider-Man has to deal with some sort of, how John Jameson comes back and he brings back the Venom symbiote or whatever in space. Some sort of space-like event could also trigger off these other astronauts who are up there. And then there's like a casual mention of them crashing down on Earth. And then we fast forward to them at like the tail end of the movie, and it's them. And then they're walking out like, oh, where are we? And then fade to black real fast. And then, Spider-Man may return or whatever in Fantastic Four, and everyone loses their damn minds. And it would be a cool way too, because I think it's amazing. What is it? Amazing Stories or Amazing Fantasy or something like that is where Spider-Man was actually first seen with the Fantastic Four. So you could kind of reverse it and use Spider-Man to introduce the Fantastic Four. But then again, I'm not the one making these stories, so we'll see. But I think that'd be a fun way to do it. That being said, we'll move on from the number 2 to our number 1, and it's a lot of Spidey talk, so we'll get through it pretty quick here. First of which is that it looks like Spider-Man, even though we talked about him on our last show as being back with Sony, he's back home with Marvel over at Marvel Studios and Disney. They decided to share the character again, giving Marvel/Disney 20% of the profit income for the gross on these movies going forward. They have the merch rights as they did before. Then we have Spider-Man potentially showing up in Venom 2, him getting his own movie, which is going to be July 16th in 2021, and potentially appearing in a future Marvel film to be determined. What do you make of that right off the bat?
Well, I'm glad that Sony just didn't rip Spider-Man from MCU.
True.
Although I am a little curious as to what still might have happened had the new deal never been brokered.
Oh, I know. I really wanted to know, like, again, we're talking Marvel what ifs before. That's the what if I want to see. What if Spider-Man had gone on back to Sony, like, officially? And how would that have worked out? But we got what we got now. So are you glad to see him get at least a third and final movie in his trilogy to wrap out the Tom Holland high school years?
Yeah, I think so. I'm glad to like have actual closure versus now we have to see a completely sort of different iteration with Sony and in sort of conjunction with Venom.
I mean, to be honest, it probably wouldn't have been so different. They, obviously they still would have had Holland. They would have had a lot of the cast return because they were contractually obligated for the most part. It just would have been disconnected from mentioning specific Avengers or having them interact with Spider-Man because now they're cut off and all that. But yeah, I mean, I would have liked to have seen, like, would he have interacted with Morbius? Would he have interacted more with J. Jonah Jameson as a result now? Because that's a character that was shared between the two of them. So we could have actually had MJ, Michelle, turn out to be, oh yeah, I'm actually Mary J. Watson. And then they would have kind of evolved the story from there because Sony had the rights to that character. So little things like that. I'm very curious about how that would have gone, but what we have is so much the standard now that I'm actually fine with them just continuing their story because I'm invested in what that story is. Like, I don't want to see it go the Amazing Spider-Man route. As much as I loved the second one for all of its good and bad, I wanted to see what that next story was going to be, whether it was Sinister Six or whatever, and they never got to it. So the what ifs, the what might have beens are so fascinating, but I'm glad that there is still a solid trajectory for Spider-Man going forward. And I think that's my biggest takeaway from all this. Yeah, so then we also have two other bits of Spider-Man news. One, the new Spider-Man J.J. Abrams comic book that he did with his son is out right now. Highly recommend going and getting that one. They give a nice little twist while also making it still feel like something very original. I don't want to spoil it. Brad knows what I'm talking about, and we'll leave it at that. But go check that out. But back over on the Sony side of things, talking about Spider-Man and everything, I mentioned that Venom is still on its way. It seems like it's about to start filming here in the Bay Area. So I've actually been talking to a few people who may or may not be trying to get me a role in the movie, even if it's just as an extra. And I'm 100% in on that if I can get in on it. I have to keep that hush-hush for now, but I'm trying. And while that's going on, we know that Morbius is basically finished filming and that now they're saying that they want to put a Madam Web movie together. What do you think about a Madam Web movie over at Sony?
Maybe getting a little ahead of themselves.
So,
the idea is cool.
Let me ask you this. Why do you think it's ahead of themselves first?
Okay, so I don't think that they're, even if they had Tom Holland before the whole, MCU and Sony got back together kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
I don't think Tom Holland's Spider-Man would have been the same coming from the MCU. I think they would have, they were going to write him a little bit differently.
I mean, that wouldn't surprise me, no, but yeah.
But as far as Madam Web, that's like 3 or 4 movies away from even considering that even being an idea versus coming up with it now.
True.
Either means they already have a roadmap, which I wouldn't be surprised of what they want to do, but like Madam Web is like Madam Web's kind of like the cosmic side of the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, it's definitely whether it's her or the Beyonder.
You're getting into a lot of complicated stuff with Madam Web.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's one of those kind of characters that you really have to go through a deep dive of Spider-Man to get to, or, and this is why I think it's actually not a terrible idea, you get into the multiverse side of Spider-Man And they've already kind of done that and made it work with Into the Spider-Verse. The only thing that's a little contradictory here, I'm hearing some people say that it's a live action movie and other people saying that it's animated. If it's animated, I think it makes more sense in terms of creating the why all those characters came together for the Spider-Verse movie, because there was just this event. I mean, I know that it was through the portals, but kind of how did that work, and how did, there's got to be some mechanics to it, and she kind of can help explain how that all worked the way that it did, and maybe be a catalyst for bringing in new Spider-Man that we haven't seen. But if it's a live action one, that's the thing that's really weird and interesting to me, because it's like, is that a way for them to go, oh, we can animate Tom Holland's voice and maybe Tom Hardy's voice and use them as characters that we can put into an animated film down the road? I don't know what the live action version of that would be per se. So
yeah,
the live action one concerns me. The animated one excites me. I think that's probably my easiest way of putting it. Is that how you feel or no?
Yeah, I think animated would be better suited for it.
Braz is like, yeah, sure, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, I would like to see a live version of it, but
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I know. And again, we were talking about like Silver and Black, or maybe I screwed up the name or whatever, which was supposed to be Silver Sable and Black Cat and all these other weird kind of tentative Spider-Man movies that were supposed to come down the pipeline and just never really did. But this one could work. I think it makes more sense than some of the other ones that we saw, to be honest. Do we need it? No. Will we probably get it? Probably not. But I just wanted, before we close this out and we move on to the big talk in a second here, I wanted to give you what Sony's tentative Marvel film slate is to be. And these are all either in production or being, shopped around to see if they can greenlight them. First of all, we have Morbius. We know that's happening. Venom 2. We know that's happening. Spider-Man 3 and 4 with Tom Holland, of course. Into the Spider-Verse 2. Then it gets a little crazy. We've got apparently an all-female Spider-Verse spinoff. Kraven the Hunter getting his own movie. Black Cat getting her own movie. Silver Sable getting her own movie. Silk, Jackpot, Night Watch, Madam Web, and somewhere, maybe down the road, we'll get a Sinister Six movie. So, yeah, they've got a lot of ideas for what they can do with Spider-Man, which I gotta say is pretty interesting that they can even go to that level of exploration with the characters. But yeah, it's a bit of a reach to stretch that material that thin. Like, I think if you cut them down to maybe like a third of that and use them to branch off into those other movies down the road, maybe something like that would work. But just pump your brakes and just take the solace in the fact that Venom somehow worked, and build from that and build on the Spider-Verse and just do that and see if you can make something greater beyond that. But for now, 2 movies at a time is enough for Sony, in my opinion. Let's just leave it there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is enough for the Marvel talk. Let's go to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back to talk about Kevin Feige and Star Wars.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
This week's sponsor is Loot Crate. For less than $20 a month, Loot Crate gives the geek in you a special treat with each box. Loot Crate is a subscription box service with more than $40 worth of geek, gamer, pop culture gear, collectibles, apparel, etc. You'll have until the 19th at 9 p.m. Pacific to subscribe and receive this month's crate. And when the cutoff happens, that's it. It is over. So head to lootcrate.com/nerdrage and use the promo code NERDRAGE to get 10% off your crate today.
And now, on with the show.
And we're back. Okay, so we're probably not going to do a big talk for this week's The Big Talk. But we wanted to talk about the fact that Kevin Feige now is apparently going to be doing a film, or maybe even taking over the film universe of the Star Wars franchise. So, Brad, what did you think about when you heard this news?
Smoke signals. Smoke signals. I don't think this is Star Wars. I don't think this is Lucasfilm or Disney getting rid of Kathleen Kennedy. However, this is definitely going to be a very large dent in her armor.
Interesting. And
For
how
sure.
so?
First off, I don't think Kevin Feige is going to take over making Star Wars movies. I think he's committed to the MCU. That's where he's going to stay.
It definitely
However,
feels like his bread and butter. Is stay in his lane. Yeah.
exactly. I think they're more so bringing Feige over because he knows how to outline stories, large overarching stories.
Okay.
The MCU wasn't successful simply just by chance.
True.
Kevin Feige helped put all of those stories together. He had an outline together, and for the most part, directors were able to kind of, I'm sure the directors had wiggle room where they could do whatever they wanted, but
Yeah.
there were story beats that he wanted followed so that it could all come up to, what Infinity War and Endgame came out to be.
Exactly.
So I think, and I don't think they'll ever admit this, but I don't think The Force Awakens, this new trilogy, had any direction whatsoever. I think J.J. Abrams started something with The Force Awakens and was hoping that Rian Johnson and who was the director that was originally tied to Episode 9?
It was either J.A. Bayona or
Might have been Bayona.
it was another one from the Jurassic World series.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think J.J. Abrams kind of set something up promising. Was hoping that 8 and 9 would build off it. Well, Rian Johnson just kind of tossed all that aside.
Yeah.
And subverted expectations, regardless.
Colin Trevorrow, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, Colin Trevorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I think with J.J. Abrams trying to kind of salvage Episode 9, trying to salvage the goodwill and kind of put Star Wars back in a more coveted spot rather than sort of where it is right now.
Okay.
I would say Star Wars is kind of a failing franchise. If you look at the toy sales for Star Wars, they're extremely down from the numbers where they used to be.
Yeah, I mean,
It's more. I think they're more. I don't know if they're more concerned with the toy sales or just the movie franchise itself, which are, they're both big money makers. But
right.
Kevin Feige being brought over is a sign that not all is well within the Lucasfilm Disney side of things. There's a lack of, vision.
Yeah.
And I think instead of hoping, the next trilogy they write in the next, 3 or 4 years, that it'll become a success, I think they're being proactive and they're trying to get somebody in that is able to help outline a story fully and that will be adhered to rather than, like one director just setting something up and hoping the next guy takes over for him.
Yeah, because my understanding is with JJ, they had like this generalized outline of where they were going to go and where they were going to take it. Now, granted, I think a lot of people. Hold on, I know you have a lot to say on that point. Just let me get there. Apparently there was like this general outline that they had for where they were going to kind of take the series, and then I guess, Ryan came in, took his liberties with some of the material and all that stuff. And I think that might be some of the truth. But then again, I think to save face, Disney does a good job of this. Whether it's Star Wars or not, they come in and then they have all the actors like, oh no, we're a happy family. This was all part of the plan the whole time. And then every once in a while, you'll see like this subtle tweet about how things, not all is well in the galaxy, so to speak. And then it just kind of lets you in on some insight that maybe some of this stuff wasn't thoroughly as fleshed out as we might have made it, or they might have made it to believe. So I don't know really what the truth is. I think Star Wars got too big too fast. And I if I'm being honest, I blame Disney for it. And I'm not I'm not shitting on Disney specifically because I think that they had bad intentions. I think they saw, here's a juggernaut, just like Marvel's a juggernaut. We can stretch this out. There's enough lore and enough things that we can expand upon that we'll get there, and we'll be, you know, $1 billion behemoth over here with our other $1 billion behemoth over on the other side. And we're just going to keep raking in money because of these big tentpoles we've got. The problem is Star Wars. Well, first of all, I don't think they were listening to their fans. They were listening to what they thought the fans wanted. And it's
very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
They thought
side topic, but go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something to explore for sure. They thought the fans wanted things to go with new, bold, fresh, not like the prequels, because they had heard enough things over the years, and they might have listened to the repetitious chants of like, we don't like this and blah, blah, blah. It would be like if Warner Brothers had listened to the fact that, Martha was such a meme kind of thing, and like, oh, we can never mention Martha in any sort of Batman or Superman related content again, and like only listen to that part of the conversation, and then but didn't listen to everything else that the fans were talking about. That's why I have so much respect for I can't think of his name now. The other creative force behind the Star Wars franchise, but he's been doing most of the
George Lucas.
No, younger. I can't think of his name right now, but he's the one who's been lending his talents to most of the animated features and like Star Wars Rebels.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but there are, I think, too many creative cooks. They don't have one solid force, because I think he's doing his thing that's keeping everything relatively canon. And then you've got the Kathleen Kennedy side of things going, we need to be bold. We need to be fresh. We need to come at people with, random stories about special female characters or this rebel group that maybe not everyone cared about. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you're really taking a lot of 50-50 shots with these. Because I think what people wanted was they wanted to see some level of exploration with Obi-Wan. I think they wanted to see some sort of Boba Fett-ish movie that kind of explained either him getting out of the Sarlacc pit or why he's such a badass in a prequel of some sort. They wanted a little bit of an explanation of where Luke went to after all these years, and they wanted to know that the franchise could continue on without it being about the Skywalker saga. And they got some of that, but it's like they only listened to parts of that messaging, and then they just started creating their own extra stuff about, characters that are running through casinos and weird politics stuff that I don't think fans were looking for, and trying to add their own level of messaging into things that really alienated a lot of fans who weren't looking for that.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing to look at is Bob Iger just put out his memoirs.
Oh yeah,
and in it he talks about acquiring Lucasfilm from George Lucas.
Oh yeah, and how hurt he was.
What's that?
And how hurt George Lucas was to lose it.
I think he was putting it lightly. I think George Lucas was pissed because when they originally bought Lucasfilm, they also in part bought the story treatments for the new trilogy that George was putting together.
Right.
And
we talked about that on our show too before.
Yeah, exactly. And just to kind of point out how sort of out of their depth Disney was.
Yeah.
I think Bob Iger was quoted that he screened The Force Awakens to George, and George was really, really disappointed in it, I guess, in his own words.
Oh, just like me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't want to ever seem like I'm shitting on Star Wars, because I like The Last Jedi. I did, and I know a lot of people didn't. So
I will always shit on The Last Jedi.
I know you will, and see, then that's totally fine. But and this is why I go back to what I was saying before, is like they took bold risks with what they were doing. They weren't really, except for the first one, Force Awakens is so
safe.
It's so safe and almost in a copy and paste kind of way that I was just like, I just felt like I was watching something I had seen before, but just with like a new color palette, which was really weird. So that's why it never left any sort of emotional mark on me after seeing that movie. I was like, okay, well, that happened. That being said, though, you know, Last Jedi comes around and it's so big, it's so bold, and respectfully, some people think that it's really not even Star Wars in the way that some of the characters act and react to certain situations. And I get that, but that actually made me feel something about the franchise that I hadn't felt. Even if I don't think that's the best film in the franchise, it was something, and it worked for me. But I think what they needed to do was just be simple and straightforward. Like the thing that works for the Marvel movies, they're not trying to do big and bold, but they're trying to at least create new and continue the story and keep it going in a direction without it being like, how do I put it? Like they're not trying to do Ant-Man and then have another small character who's the same thing like Ant-Man do that kind of movie over and over again, just with a different actor. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's kind of my point, is like you can keep it safe and contained and in the realm of what people expect it to be, but you can also drive the narrative forward. And I just feel like they either did one thing or the other, and it was almost like two extremes. One was like so safe, it just felt like it didn't move at all. And the other one was almost so radical, it was like, holy crap, what is this? I don't even think this is Star Wars anymore. And somewhere in between that is what you needed for this franchise to just be the smooth ride of a $1 billion franchise that it should be. And then we've got solo movies, and then we got The Mandalorian. We got all these things and a million other animated shows, half of which people haven't seen or don't want to see. Like, they're doing so much with the thing. They need to simplify, and I hope that they kind of ground it for a little bit. You know, go maybe one live action content or in TV, one live action in movie. And then, you know, maybe we'll see what the next year brings. Maybe we bring in an animated show and we kind of slowly build it back out again. But there's just too much going on, in my opinion, with Star Wars. And that's why if Kevin Feige is really coming in to steer the ship, maybe not control the whole thing, but at least put it back on course, I hope he does something like that. Even if he puts, and now it just came back to me, Dave Filoni, that man knows his Star Wars. And he's the guy, respectfully, who I think should be running the show. I think, like, if we're talking in, like, chain of command, it should be Feige dictating what he thinks should work to Filoni, and then Filoni doing his magic, and then maybe having, like, a Kathleen Kennedy come in and being like, hey, you're not really taking it into account, maybe some level of diversity or some of these additional details that maybe he's not thinking about, but being, like, an additional voice to help him, you know, think about the greater universe too. So I could see it as that sort of 3-tier system for kind of guiding the Star Wars universe. But I think it needs to be in that order, not with Kathleen Kennedy at the top. She has great ideas, but not all of them are great. And I think that's part of the problem, is you need someone who's deeply into Star Wars. And I don't think Kathleen is as invested as someone like Dave is.
Well, Bob Iger kind of hinted that he sort of has the final say now on Star Wars properties now, not Kathleen Kennedy.
Okay. And that makes sense, because you probably read in that same article that they're trying to, like, cut down on the sequel thing. They're basically hinting you're not going to see a sequel to Solo unless we find a reason to come back to that part of the universe through a different avenue. Frankly, if they did, what is her name? Kira. If they brought back her and gave her a series on Disney Plus that talks about her with Crimson Dawn and her interaction with Darth Maul at some point, that would be kind of cool, and explore it that way. And then go, oh yeah, and then I've got to head back to, I don't know, whatever planet, and then it's you get to get a glimpse of Han, and then, you know, maybe Lando's nearby, or they're playing Sabacc against each other or something like that. But I don't think you need to have a Solo sequel, but there's ways that you can talk about the stories in this universe that don't feel like you're completely retreading the same ground, and you're also continuing to move the story forward in a fun and interesting direction that feels like good, solid canon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think, to put it simply, Kevin Feige, is he going to help things, or is he going to just kind of temporarily fix things?
I hope he's coming in and it's going to be like a permanent impact,
Okay.
not just a temporary fix.
Now, would it be do you think that if that was the case, do you think that would be at a cost to the Marvel Universe? Because I know you were kind of alluding to that before when we started.
Like I said, I don't think Feige is going to split his time. I think what he's mainly going to try to do is get all of the, I guess, executive producers and writers focused and sort of aimed at the same goal, not having a direct hand in it.
Okay, and that makes sense. Okay, any final thoughts about Kevin Feige before we wrap this one up for the week?
Don't screw it up.
Right, okay, fair enough. I really just genuinely want to say thank you guys for being so patient. You are going to see probably an episode every single day this week. Brad is going to create the show list after we're done with this episode, and I'm just going to fire them all off. And Libsyn can basically drop our episodes off each day for us. So each day you should get a brand new episode of content until we go through, I think we've got about 8 in our backup here. So we want to get all those episodes out for you guys. So while we're gone over the weekend, there's going to be plenty of content, even if we're in the middle of interviews and things at LA Comic-Con. If you are in the LA Comic-Con area, come on out, say hi. We'll sign a t-shirt or give you a free t-shirt or hand out some merchandise. Just hang out with us. We'll say hi. Even if one of us has to go off to an interview, we always hang out with our fans at any of these conventions. So if you see us, we'll definitely be rocking our own merch. So you can't miss us. And be sure to, have a good time with us. I'm trying to think about what else. Episodes, Comic-Con's coming up. We're going to have some really cool interviews that I can't wait for you guys to hear. Some people from my media-based past are going to be making an appearance on the show. We're setting all that stuff up. Some interviews with some other kind of big names that you probably heard of will be appearing soon enough on the show. And we're trying to, again, stylize things and format it so that it's a little bit more regular. And we apologize that this episode took so long to get out, frankly. And thank you for listening to such a big episode like this, because Brad and I have talked, and we definitely want to keep it to about an hour and a half for these things going forward. That being said, you guys know where to find us. We are on Twitter at the Nerd Rage Pod, or myself personally. You can find Ryans_ramblings and hit me up either one of those pages. Brad has a Twitter too, which I think you said is ominous_drawer. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Even though he barely uses it, and we're going to get him there eventually one of these days. Facebook, the Nerd Rage Podcast, pretty straightforward there. If you can support any of the people we mentioned at the top of the show, our buddies, John Stratman and Jay Sandlin, that would be much appreciated. If you can support us on our Patreon, be appreciated, as well as our TeePublic store if you want to buy a shirt and maybe bring it, and then we'll sign it at the convention or something, or just get any of our merch. Beyond that, find us anywhere podcasts can be found. Check us out at thenerdragepodcast.com. And I think for the Nerd Rage Podcast, this has been Nerd Rage Weekly, and I've been Ryan Anderson.
And I'm Brad Learman.
And we'll see you guys again next week.